Hello there. I'll make this brief, don't worry. My name's Matt Bingle. I'm one of the co hosts and the editor for this very special episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. This episode marks our third anniversary. My goodness, I can't believe how quickly the time has flown by. On behalf of myself, Jake, Chris, and the entire crew, I want to say thank you for all of your support over the years. It really means a lot to us that you enjoy what we do as much as we do. Whether you've been a fan since day one or joined us just recently, thank you. 2024 has been particularly special for us, and it's only the first half. We hit 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube page. We've hit 300,000 views on the channel just recently, and celebrated our 200th episode, all within about 3 months. Your support has made all of this possible, and we can't thank you enough. We have a lot of amazing episodes coming up for the second half of the year and beyond, so stay tuned. Now, speaking of episodes, sit back, relax, and enjoy this special anniversary episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show.
Hey, it's DJ Bob Runkle, host of the DJ Bob Show, and you're watching a podcast where nostalgia comes alive. It's Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. Roll it!
Welcome to Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. Join Jake and his friends on a journey through pop culture of the past, where they interview professionals in the worlds of acting, directing, writing, puppeteering, and so much more. Who will they be chatting with today? Find out in this Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode.
Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. I'm here with us, thank you for joining. As always, I'm your host, Jake Duffenball. And today, as always, our co-hosts, Chris Bixby and Matt Bingle. How you guys doing?
Doing good?
Doing good. Hello, everybody. How you doing? Jake, how you doing?
Doing great, Matt. Thank you for asking. Chris, what do we have for today?
Today's guest is best known for his contributions to the Muppet fandom, mostly through co-owning the Muppet fansite ToughPigs. We're here to talk about that and many more later on. Please welcome Joe Hennes. Joe, happy to have you here.
Thank you. Please sit down. It's wonderful to be here. It's wonderful to be clapped at. Thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful.
We're
happy
delighted
to
to
be here.
have you.
Absolutely.
Yes, so to kick this off, could you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah. What do? I usually sit on the couch and watch movies. I eat a lot of ice cream. Like ice cream a lot. No, so yeah, I'm as you said, I'm co-owner of toughpigs.com. I'm also the editor-in-chief over there. In case anyone doesn't know, ToughPigs is the Muppets fan site. I like to say we're the premier Muppet fan site. I don't know if there's a way to measure that we're premier, but I'll say it anyway, and I dare you to prove me wrong. But we've been around since 2001, which is insane. Like ToughPigs, I always said ToughPigs was a blog before the word blog existed. And someone pointed out to me recently that we have outlasted Twitter.
Wow.
Twitter became a thing while we were already a thing, and now Twitter is something else. And I don't know, that's bonkers. But yes, we've been around for a very long time, for over 20 years. And we do like commentaries and reviews and interviews and podcasts and art spotlights and social media stuff and it's all related to Muppets, Sesame Street, Fraggle Rock, anything related to Jim Henson. And it's just a labor of love. There's just a bunch of us who just really like Muppets, and we like writing about them and talking about them on podcasts and whatever else it takes to just like get the fandom excited about the fact that the Muppets are cool. And if you disagree with that, then we have to prove you otherwise.
That's great. What was your childhood like, and how did you grow up?
So I grew up in the suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio, and shout out to Cleveland. And I mean, I don't know. I guess like when it comes to Muppet stuff, I was like most kids. Like I watched Sesame Street at the age that was appropriate for Sesame Street viewers, and then I kept watching Sesame Street after it was probably not really appropriate anymore. And then I found the Muppets and got obsessed with the Muppets. And then I found like the further works of Jim Henson. I got obsessed with that stuff, and it just kind of never went away for me. And like my parents were cool with it. Like obviously they it's a pretty safe and innocuous thing for a child to be into. It wasn't like it was drugs. Yeah, that was just, I don't know. I was just like that weird kid who just loved Muppets, and that turned out pretty well for me, and it seems like it turned out pretty well for you guys too.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Absolutely,
Yes, it
yeah.
did.
Yes, indeed, it sure has. So, as a Muppets fan, what's your earliest Muppets memory?
Oh no, I don't know how to answer that because I really absorbed so much Sesame Street when I was really young. Like, I mean, I was also so I was born in the early 80s, and that was the time in which it was like, I don't know if it was more or less acceptable, but it was a little more common maybe that
Mhm.
parents would just like sit the kid in front of the TV because mom's gonna go make dinner, that sort of thing.
Of
And like
course,
there was just
yeah.
no question about it. Yeah. And like we were a little bit more latchkey in that way. Like we were definitely like the kids who like we would go play in in the neighborhood until the streetlights came on, and then we knew that was when it was time to go home. So
My
like
mom as well.
yeah, there you go.
Her
So Sesame Street in those days was on twice a day, and
Oh, yeah.
it was like it was important for me to be there for both episodes. I was probably the same episode twice, but like I had to watch it. And like I remember having fights with my brother. I have an older brother who it was like Sesame Street was on at the same time as He-Man, and he really needed to watch He-Man, and I really needed to watch Sesame Street, and we only had one TV, so
Oh.
How did you end up figuring that out?
Yeah.
we probably took turns, and like, yeah, again, like Sesame was on twice a day, so like it was a little bit easier to be like, all right, Joe,
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
take a break today, let your brother have the TV, you'll go back to it in a half hour. Yeah.
So, growing up a Muppets fan, were there any like kind of specific Muppets that really kind of caught your eye? Like, who are some of your favorite like Muppets growing up?
That is an unfair question. That's like choosing a favorite child. I mean, this is always, I feel like the question that I get most often in these interviews is like, who's your favorite Muppet? It's an easy question. I ask the same question to people. It's not an unfair question, but it's a hard question. I know you're not specifically asking like, who's my favorite Muppet, but it's hard to choose like, who am I obsessed with today? Who like I've got, I don't know, there's like times where I'll be watching the Muppet Show and I'll be like, I never realized how funny Bunsen is, Bunsen Honeydew. And like I'll get really into Bunsen for like a week.
Oh yeah.
But like, I don't know, the ones who kind of like get onto my radar and then kind of stay there for longer. Like I love Fozzie Bear. I love Sweetums. I love,
yeah.
I mean, I love Kermit the Frog. Who doesn't love Kermit the Frog? He's the OG.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think it's easier to ask me which Muppets do I not like, because those are the ones I'll trash talk for you guys. Everyone else I like. There's like 3 of them that's like, that guy can go screw himself.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's wonderful. So, kind of curious, what are some of your favorite Muppet projects growing up?
Yeah, the number one is always gonna be the Muppet Show. Like, a Muppet Show is that benchmark that every other Muppet project should try to be. It's just like that perfect storm of like, it's fun and funny and chaotic, but also poignant and well produced and well written. But like, it's got this punk rock feel to it that like that current Muppet projects through Disney will never have again, because it's part of the Disney machine and like there's too many cooks in the kitchen. But back
Right,
then it
yeah.
was just like, I don't know, let's try something. And like I love that. It's so, you could really like, you could taste it in those, especially those first few years of the Muppet Show. I love it. It's my favorite.
Yeah, because back then things were more independent, and now it's a much more, I guess, kind of produced thing, if that makes sense. Like they have like this whole
Yeah.
Totally.
like all these different teams working on stuff, and it kind of sucks the
Right.
magic away a little bit.
It does, and there's good stuff that comes of it for sure. Like I'm not saying it's all bad. The thing that I think about a lot, I was I did a podcast called The Muppets, the sitcom, the podcast. We were reviewing the 2015 sitcom 5 years after the show had aired,
Oh, okay,
and
yeah.
I did an interview with Matt Vogel on that
Oh yeah, I love
podcast.
that. Yeah.
Matt's
I
great.
love
Yeah,
Matt. He's great.
has he been on your show as well?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
He's awesome.
Oh,
Great.
yes.
Yeah, Matt's the best. So in the episode we were talking about, Miss Piggy is doing an aerial, like she's like hanging from silks from the ceiling, like doing like a rope dance exercise thing.
Yeah.
And in the episode, what they did was like they had puppeteers in green screen suits, and like they're very well choreographed. Like, here's how she's gonna swing, here's how she's gonna move, and like it looks very natural. It looks very cool from like a puppetry standpoint. Again, like not bad choices. But I asked him, I'm like, but what makes you decide that you're gonna spend a whole day just doing this one thing? Where like we know if this was like 1977 and they were doing this on the Muppet Show, Jim Henson would have stapled Miss Piggy's hands to a rope and then held the bottom of the rope and just swung it around, and she would have been like a rag doll up there, and it would have been hysterical. And two totally different bits. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. Not saying one is better than the other, but that's the kind of thing that I'm like, I'm bringing up Matt Vogel, not just because, you know, it's Matt Vogel, but like I brought it up to him because I kind of wanted to like pitch it to him somewhere in the back of his brain of like, you can do that. You can save money, save time, do something that's pure Muppety, and it's really, really fun and funny on a different wavelength that they just don't do anymore now they're under the Disney banner. And it's like, I don't know, if I was a producer, I'd be like, did you say save money? Then yes, let's do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Always good to save money.
Yes.
Completely agree.
That's great. I mean, how they went from like the three of us kind of like first got into with Henson and all those shows. I mean, of course, you know, we grew up, you know, with first, you know, with Sesame Street, and then Bear, and Big Blue House, and Frogger Rock. I mean, both of them, you know, Chris and Matt, they're born in 2000. I was born in 2004.
Yep.
But of course, you know, I was lucky enough to, you know, that I got to like know about those shows, and you know, I'm glad, you know, that, you know, I mean, I feel like no matter like when you're born, or no matter what, you'll still learn about much of Henson.
I mean,
you know, all those things.
When you say that you guys were born in 2000, 2004, like that, first of all, it makes me want to crumble into dust. But
I mean, it makes sense.
but yeah, of course. But like that's gonna happen.
It makes
to you
sense
in
to
20
crumble
years.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Oh yeah.
No, it'll make sense that like whatever, it doesn't matter. So, but like my gut reaction is like, oh my god, how can you do a nostalgia show? How can you talk about this old stuff when you weren't there? It doesn't matter. You're absolutely right. Like I'm talking about the Muppet Show. I was not alive when the Muppet Show aired. Still like that's the great thing about the Muppets. That's a great thing about the fact that like we can access media. When I was a kid, I would hear. I mean, the Muppet Show was impossible to find. It wasn't syndicated by that point. Like I knew about it. I'd seen a few episodes.
It wasn't a thing, you know.
Yeah, like we had.
Like if you missed it, if you missed it, you're not gonna see it again.
Like,
exactly.
Kind of like those.
Yeah, there wasn't
old,
things like DVR back then.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
It was kind of like those old Peanuts specials. Like if you missed it, you missed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like, but did you hear they did this special come up? It's at Walt Disney World that you will literally like not see for another 30 years until after it's gone. You know what I mean? Like it's so hard. But here's the thing too, is that the Muppets specifically, and like there's other franchises like this as well, but the Muppets are such an old and rich brand. Like they're over 50 years old. There's so much content because Jim Henson was constantly working, constantly creating, that guys like us, when we decide, hey, I love Muppets and I want to discover everything there is, you will never reach the bottom of that pit. Like you will always find a new thing. Like you mentioned Bear in the Blue House a minute ago. That is one of my my missing puzzle pieces of Muppet fandom, because I was a little bit too old for Bear when it premiered, and like I just never really sought it out. And like now, as a grown ass adult, I kind of need to like, okay, go back and watch that thing, and I know it'll be good. I just like haven't made the time for it yet, and that's great. There's always going to be more. I'll watch Bear, and then I'll go, you know what? I've never seen Farscape. I should go watch Farscape, and then it'll be like, hey, did you know that we found all these old episodes of Our Place from 1960 whatever? And it's like, great, that's more new stuff for me to watch. And yeah, there's always gonna be more. What a joy that is.
I know, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, me particularly, I've been a Fraggle fan 16 years, and I didn't grow up with the original, you know, but I still think it's one of my favorite shows I've ever watched, and Back to the Rock's amazing too. You know.
Yeah, they're good shows.
I
It
know.
helps too that
They're-
like
they're
stuff
great.
like that is really timeless. Like they're
is.
not time capsules where you watch it and go, boy, the 80s sure were weird. It's like, no, that could have been made last year and it would still be just as good and just as prevalent. I think that's one of the reasons why Back to the Rock works so well, is because you could just
absolutely.
pick up where they left off.
And having
Yeah.
someone like John Tartaglia, who grew up a big Fraggle Rock fan, you know,
Oh
as
my
a,
gosh.
you know, taking on Gobo and then, you know, being executive producer and writing and directing, like,
creative
But-
consultant and all those things. It's like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
For the
I don't
franchise.
think more will be better with all that more than Johnny, because he's
Yeah,
such a
and-
down to earth god that he wants.
other thing about
I wanna do
Johnny-
this.
Yeah, the other thing about Johnny too is like he's got a good eye for knowing what is fan service and what is important to the project, because I think there are other people who come into it. I'll give maybe an unpopular example, but Jason Segel came into the Muppets as a fan first, and not to say he doesn't have experience making movies and writing and character creation, things like that, but there's a reason that movie is really about him and Walter, because that was the story he wanted to tell, and like his memory of what Muppets are and could be. And I think that project now, as much as I like that movie, I really do like it, it feels so much like a personal project, like a passion project that he needed to do for himself.
Yeah,
And
I can see that. Yeah.
John Tartaglia,
Yeah.
and John Tartaglia is also coming at it from a fandom point of view, but he knows what's important for Fraggle Rock as a whole. And he can make a show that's not for him, it's for everyone. It's for the fans, it's for Henson, it's for Apple, it's for new fans and old fans. He's a good guy. He knows what he's doing.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely, he's so great. I mean, the way, because when you think about, when there's gonna be like a iconic, Henson related shows like Fraggle Rock be rebooted, you have to take, as much responsibility of what it was to the original show, but kind of to that way to reboot, but also in a new way for a new generation fans to watch it. And then like, I love what it is, or for what and I think that's I think for today's generation to have a Fraggle Rock reboot and being that amazing what it is, I think that's so great for new people to kind of discover Fraggle Rock because of that series, particularly.
Yeah,
So
Because
I
they
think
felt
that's
there were
great.
more stories to tell. I mean, with some reboots, it's kind of like, it ran its course, and it was good back then and might not work now. But like you said, Joe, with Fraggle Rock, it still holds up, and there's obviously there are obviously more stories to tell. So they decided, hey, let's bring it back. Let's get Johnny on board. Let's get Donna Kimball to do Moki, and so on. Like, it's just a
bring
wonderful
back, and bring
reboot.
back Karen and
Yeah.
Dave.
Oh my
and,
gosh.
Absolutely, yeah. And everyone just seems to love doing it so much.
Oh, yeah.
We're recording season 2 of our Fraggle Talk podcast right now with the cast and crew, and
Nice.
it's
That's wonderful.
it's such a joy to hear like they had a great time doing it, and everyone feels it's like such a personal connection to the show, and all that stuff behind the scenes really just makes it better.
For sure. Definitely.
Without a doubt. So this question could kind of go in with Sesame Street as well, but do you have any favorite celebrities that either the Muppets or Sesame have collaborated with over the years?
Yeah, probably. So like I think the easy one for me is like, okay, I'll pick out some of my favorite Muppet Show episodes, and it's those folks like Harry Belafonte it's such a great
Classic.
episode.
Yeah.
But
Great episode.
But you're asking me about like celebrities. It's probably people who've worked with the Muppets multiple times, like Steve
Yeah.
Martin. I love Steve Martin, and
Steve
each
Martin,
time
yes.
he worked with
Yep.
Muppets, it's great.
Mhm.
It's gold. Actually, I'll give you a more recent one. I was so happy they got him for Muppets Mayhem. The episode with Ben Schwartz just going back and forth with Animal at the job, the unemployment
Yeah.
agency was
Yeah, it's
so
great.
friggin' funny. Actually, I'll give you one more. Now, of course, everything's coming to me. Did you guys watch the Not Too Late show with Elmo?
Oh, yeah.
I did.
Yeah, I do.
Mhm.
the first season of that show I thought was great. I did not care for the second season, but the first season, this was when I was still working at Sesame Street, and I heard that John Mulaney was going to be filming an episode. And I remember telling my boss, I'm not going to ask permission. I need to go to set. I need to be there. I need to see this happen live. And already, I think John Mulaney is hysterical. He's a great performer, but he's a great writer. First and foremost, he's a writer. And I'm watching him on set with Cookie and Elmo, and he's doing things I've never seen a celebrity do before. Like to say, like he would like stop for a second and be like, hey, you know what would be funny? If I say this, then Cookie Monster, you can say that. And he's basically giving a joke to Cookie Monster and like pitching it on the floor. And everyone's going, yeah, that's really funny. Do it. And like the fact that not only he's not there to make himself look good, like he's there to make good content. And if the laugh comes from the puppet, that's even better. And the fact that he was playing with the Sesame characters in that way, that episode came out so well. It's so funny, and there's so much funny stuff that got left on the cutting room floor, I'm sure. But yeah, I would love to see John Mulaney do more with the Muppets.
That's nice. Yeah, there are a lot of great celebrities. I mean, this one was kind of from like our generation, but with Sesame Street, I love the number they did with Patti LaBelle, the gospel alphabet.
Yeah.
I love the gospel alphabet, but I will tell you, like we're talking about like all-time favorite Sesame Street sketches, like moments.
Mm-hmm.
Patti LaBelle singing "How I Miss My Ex" is like a top
Yeah,
3
that's
moment
right.
for me.
That's another great
love
one.
that.
Right.
Like the alphabet's great, don't get me wrong, but "How I Miss My Ex," oh, chef's kiss. What a great song, great performance. I love it.
Yeah, and even like the really early Sesame stuff, like James Earl Jones doing the alphabet, like in like one of the first episodes, like that's another classic. Yeah,
Yeah,
a lot
yeah.
of good ones.
When again, I mean, it's no secret I worked at Sesame Street. I was there. I remember it was like a year or two before. It must have been about 2 years before the 50th anniversary, and I had developed a big pitch deck of like all the stuff that I wanted to see for the 50th, like ways that we could celebrate. And of course, like none of it happens. Like, and it was all like, big idea stuff. And my hope was that maybe 1 or 2 things would get greenlit. But my idea for like the 50th anniversary special was that they do a live show and they invite every celebrity that had ever been on Sesame Street, because there's a long list, as you guys know. It's 50 years. And we even like went through the list, like, okay, there's all these like, people who passed away, people who are maybe a little problematic now, people who like they had a little like moment on Sesame Street, but they're not really famous. And like you end up still with this huge list of these big stars. It's like, yeah, ask them to put on, tuxedos and evening gowns, put a little feather in their lapel, like a yellow feather, I mean. And I thought that would have been fun. Really like steal something from the Saturday Night Live 40th
that would have been
anniversary.
So cool, yeah.
It would have been very, very cool. Yeah. I mean, I understand why they didn't do it, but like, I still think like, oh, that was a good idea. They should have done that.
Yes. So now, how did kind of being a big, Muppets fan kind of transition into inheriting the Muppet fan side, ToughPigs?
Yeah. Good question. So, for anyone who doesn't know, like I said, ToughPigs was started in 2001 by Danny Horn, who previously had published the Muppet Zine, which was a print zine. You guys don't understand. Like in the 90s, we had to send a check to a stranger, and he would then send us every few months like a print magazine in the mail, like snail mail with like stamps and stuff. Like that was how Muppet fandom worked. It was bonkers. There was no internet. This was like 1995, like it was, that was all we had. And he did that for a few years, and then he stopped the zine, and then he started this website in 2001. He ran it from 2001 to about 2005. And then at that time, he was kind of getting a little bored with it, and he wanted to start a new project, and he went off to start the Muppet Wiki, which is the best resource for all of us, I'm sure. After about a year of that, me and my roommate, Ryan Rowe, who we met through the ToughPigs forum. So like we started out as huge Muppet fans. Danny was visiting New York, and we were talking to him about it, and we were like, it seems like you're kind of done with this ToughPigs thing. Like we could just take it over. And Danny was like, oh yeah, great, here you go. And he just signed everything over to us. And it was just like, yeah, you want this URL? Like, great, have fun with it. And for a while, we kind of just ran it like Danny did. Every so often, I have an idea for an article, I'll just publish something, whatever. And like we got more and more serious about it over the years. And once we started getting to a point where like I always cite Letters to Santa as the time
Oh,
for
yeah.
us when things really changed, because they were filming in New York and they were filming outside like on a street corner, and I went and like watched them film for the day, and then like somehow got like their attention. Is like, I just want to say hi, I run this website, and they were like, oh my god, ToughPigs, and they brought me backstage, and and then like they brought us back another day to like visit the set when they were filming. It was be more than just like a silly little thing we do. Like we could do interviews, we could do news, we could do like big projects, we could build an audience, we could have a strategy. And it was a slow thing because, I think one thing a lot of people don't realize is we don't own anything that we're talking about. Like we own our content. I own the words that I write, but I don't own the concept of the Muppets. I don't own an image of Elmo that I publish on the website. So we have to be really careful about how much we can do and things like how can we monetize or not monetize. And so it's like when you know that this is not a real job, this is a hobby that turned into a second job that makes no money. That you want to spend a lot of time on, you want to building to what? I don't know. There's no end game here. But then you have to wonder like, well, how much time am I really going to spend on this thing? And I think for most of us, we just have those brains that go like, well, we love Muppets, and so we want to spread the love of Muppets.
Right.
What else would we do than run this website? So like it's worked out well for us, but it is a very weird and tricky business model that I don't actually recommend to anyone out there.
So now with ToughPigs, of course, there's a lot of like other, writing staff and things like that. How was the rest of the writing staff for ToughPigs kind of assembled?
Uh, Again, like, going back to like, we have no strategy. We don't have like, we don't recruit. We have no like true tried and true method of how we do things when we have been, finding people to write for us. There's been a few different ways that people have found us or vice versa. There's folks like Julia Gaskill, who she had a pretty popular Tumblr page about the Muppets, and she had done like a beat poet video, beat poetry video about the Muppets. And we were just like, who is this person? Like, she is like, we should be friends with her. And like, we reached out to her and we were like, do you want to like collaborate on something? And like, long story short, now she's one of our writers. And then we have people like, Matthew Soberman, who we met because we used to do these live shows here in New York, just like showing old Muppet clips and stuff. And he would come every month. He was there, and we just got to know him by the fact that he was just present. And obviously he's a big fan. And then he would pitch to us like, hey, I have this idea for this thing. Are you interested? And we go, we could try it. So like, that's how he joined the team. And, some people are like folks that were on the ToughPigs forum. Now we have a Discord, that we get to know them that way. And then we can kind of start to collaborate on things. The tricky thing is you got to be really knowledgeable about the Muppets, which many people are. You have to be, a good writer who can take notes, because we don't just publish anything. We try to take, some pride
Of
in our
course,
content.
yeah.
And not everyone knows how to do that. That is a skill that can be learned. You need to be able to be funny and to be able to match our voice. We have a kind of a more or less consistent, like kind of snarky, kind of funny, but still informative voice of the website. Sometimes we've had people who come and they write something that's a little bit too academic or a little bit too off the wall in either direction, and it's just like kind of have to meet in the middle a little bit, or else it doesn't feel like it's ours. It feels like it's a different website. You can tell. And the last thing, of course, is like you have to be able to work for free. And like I hate that that's true, but we make no money on the website. As one of the co-owners and editor-in-chief, I make no money on the website. We actually pay money out of our pocket to keep the website running. And I think as nice as it would be able to offer writers a little bit of something, it has to come from a place of this passion project notion. So finding people who fit all those criteria, we end up with just the people who are on our team. I'm sure there are more people out there who would love to write for ToughPigs. And if anyone's listening to this who feels like you are one of those people, you are welcome to email me. We could try it. I make no promises, but it's always nice to have more voices, especially, we'd love to have more diverse voices on the website. Again, since we don't recruit, it's hard to find people, that fit certain criteria that like a bunch of us, like, white guys don't really fit. But we would love to have more people. It's just, it's tricky, but we have a really good team. Like there are
Right,
people
yeah.
who, they fit certain criteria of like people who are experts in LGBT topics, people who are experts in music, people who are experts in classic film, and like these things, these things that we all have our hyperfixations on outside of the Muppets, that we can kind of cross the streams a little bit and like get this really robust stuff out there. And then same, now that we're doing more than just articles and we're doing so much podcasting, we have people who are just like really into making podcasts. And that's great because we love the stuff that we've been putting out there. We've got 3 different podcast channels, and like it's almost like we can't keep up with it because it's been so much fun to make podcasts. I mean, you guys obviously know you've been doing this show for a while now.
Yeah.
Yeah. It flies by.
It is.
Pretty soon you'll be
I
like,
know.
we've been doing this for 20 years and we
I
have
know.
someone on our podcast who was
Right?
born in 2024. How is that possible? And then you will crumble into dust.
I know.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 Much.
So this is kind of an interesting question. Was there like a specific moment, like where you realized ToughPigs was really kind of starting to take off?
God, that's a good question. I don't know if there was a moment. There have been smaller moments. Like I remember getting like an email out of the blue from Dave Goals being like, "Hey, I just want to let you know, we just love the stuff that you guys are doing." And what Davis said to us was, and he said this to us a few times. He says, very often he doesn't know what he's what's coming down the line for him, and so he'll go to ToughPigs and be like, "Oh, I guess that's the project we're working on next." Like he gets his news from us, and like that's crazy. That was a big moment. Did you guys ever see? We did a video series called Unboxing with the Henson Company.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think
That
so.
that was a big moment where Henson approached us to do this video series where essentially they were finding boxes that were in deep storage and going, "Wow, what's in this box is insane. I wish that we were filming this." And they're like, "Oh, well, we should actually have some Muppet fans who are opening these boxes and filming it." And so it was our raw reactions about finding this stuff. So like that was cool to have them approach us. And then like, I don't know, there's little things like, I hate to say this because it makes it sound like it's more about me, but like it really is. I consider all this stuff like reflections of the websites, not of myself. But like I've been recognized on the street. That's weird. That shouldn't happen for a guy who runs a fan site. I'm no celebrity. I had someone who I'm now friends with him as an adult, but when he was younger, he cosplayed as me for Comic-Con. Like what?
What?
That's
What?
insane. That's crazy. So, I mean, again, I don't
Wow.
consider myself a celebrity any more than like, I don't know. I like to say we're like spotting the local weatherman at the grocery store and you're like, "Oh, hey, it's that guy." And it's like, okay, that's enough. I can take that. About like the internet version of that, of like, oh, that's that
Right.
guy who does. I don't know. I've seen him around. But yes, that's the kind of stuff I feel like has really gone to my head. Everything else, I feel like it hasn't been a moment because it's all been so gradual. It's like,
Yeah.
like you make a contact, you see them every couple of years or so. 10 years later, you're working on them. Working on them, and like then you go, oh, hang on, that's someone who like I was obsessed with as a kid. Like I've done some cool projects with Chris Surf, the Sesame Street.
Oh
singer.
yeah.
love
Such a sweet
Love
guy.
Chris.
Yes.
Love Chris.
Previous guest
And, like-
of ours, one of our favorite people in the world.
same. And like, I would consider Chris a close and personal friend. I love Chris, but you know, it wasn't like there was a moment where Chris and I were just like, hey, like, well, like now there's a thing here. It was like this such a gradual, like, growing and flourishing of this relationship that, you know, kind of led to that. I wish I did have the like stories that I could be like, oh, well, there was this one time, and then, you know, that's why ToughPigs is ToughPigs. But yeah, that's the thing about being around for 20 some years, you know.
Yeah, we had him and Norman on the podcast twice. The first time
Great.
was just, you know, just a standard interview, and then the second time we had them back on 9/11 to talk about the We Are Family music video that they did years ago.
Sure. Yeah. Great. Yeah, that's awesome.
It was fun. It was so much fun.
Yeah,
talking to them
they're
about
great
that.
people.
Such a blast. They're and Norman is. Can I tell you a quick Norman Styles
yeah.
story?
Sure,
Yeah, sure,
yeah,
of
go for
course.
it.
As
Go
long as
for
we're
it.
here telling stories.
Yeah, I love Norman.
So we got in touch with Norman. God, this was years ago. We got in touch with him and we were like, oh, let's do an interview. So he invites me and Ryan Rowe over to his apartment in New York. And this isn't part of the story. Craig Shemin was there. And he was just like, I just want to hear stories. Like he was just like a fly on the wall. Yeah. Craig's great. So anyway, so I get my phone out and I hit the voice memo button and I start recording and we do like a 2-hour interview. It's great. He's telling us all these amazing stories. Such a good guy. Interview's over and we were like, oh, thank you so much. And I pick up my phone and I hit the save button on my phone. But that save button is really close to that delete button.
Oh.
And immediately, boom, that interview is gone. And I'm like,
no.
no. And like, because it never saved, it wasn't even like in the cloud. And like, I'm calling Apple that night and they're just like, yeah, sorry, man, you're screwed. So
Oh dear.
I had a little bit of panic. And then I told Ryan, I was like, so here's the deal. You and I independently are going to go write down everything you remember that he said. And then we'll compare notes, and then I will write an article that's like, it's not an interview. It's just like, let me tell you a story about me, you know, us meeting Norman Styles. And so I did that. And then I sent it to Norman. I said, you know, I'm so sorry, you know, this thing happened. I just need you to fact check this article. And what he did was he said, let's get on the phone. And I called him and we sat there for an hour. And he not only went through line by line and corrected information or whatever, but he was also going, oh, that reminds me of a story, you should add this to it, or oh, that add a few more details, let's put some names in there. And it occurs to me, first and foremost, Norman Styles is a head writer, and that's what a head writer does.
Oh yeah.
He says, you wrote something and it's good, but we can make it better. And it's like, it's not about me, you know, this is about you and your work. And, you know, he was also like, this is not the kind of writing that I do. Like, he doesn't write nonfiction. He doesn't do interviews. And so, like, he's kind of coming at it from this, like, comedy writer point of view. And, like, we just had such a good time. And he was such a good sport about the whole thing. And he really turned what was one of the worst experiences in my ToughPigs career into one of the best. Because he's such a good guy. Love Norm Styles.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, and Jake, you met Chris Surf in person last fall, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yes,
Oh, where'd you meet him?
I did.
Were you getting Chris?
If only.
We wish.
Oh, well, let me tell you a story about.
wish.
He's right here.
I wish.
Let me just grab him real quick. Here.
Yeah, I'm just gonna grab him. He's over there on the couch.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Love that. So yeah, to those who don't know, not too long ago, so yeah, it was September of last year.
Well, at least his dog agrees. At least
Chris
But
Surf does a
yes, you're
great dog impression. Did you guys?
I know.
Incredible.
Yes, it's amazing. It's amazing. The best one I've ever heard. It's so accurate, so spot on.
I think he's trying to calm his dog down.
Why?
He was
Keep
trying
going.
he was trying to bark the tune of Letter B. Was that right?
I think so. I don't know.
Oh man, but yeah, I'll let Jake explain the rest. But this was some like event that like Chris Surf and some folks from Between the Lions were at.
Yeah, like
Like last year, I
Jen
think.
Barn. Yeah, last September, I think it was. It was
Hmm.
Chris. It was Jen Barnhart. It was Peter Linz. I think that was it.
Yeah.
Where was I?
I don't know.
Why wasn't I there? Why wasn't I invited?
That's what I was saying. I didn't. I wish I would have gone too.
Yeah, no, that would have been great. And they actually had Theo and Cleo with them too.
Yeah. So Peter and Jen and Pam Arcero, they hold on to the puppets. So like
Yes, they
like
still
so
do.
they're like
Yes.
Chris Everly's like, hey, can you do a quick thing with Cleo? They could be like, yeah, of course, I got the puppet here.
So a lot of those puppets are
Mhm.
still in shape, which is crazy.
Oh
But,
yeah, which is so
you know, they take
great.
good care of them, and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Yeah.
it's
They
glad that
still look great after all these years.
and it's great that Chris and Norman, you know, trusted them to, you know, keep the puppets in their own, you know, possession. It's wonderful.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we just going back what I was trying to say. So to those who don't know, like I say now, so it was last year in September I got to meet not just Chris Sir, but also Peter and Jen at the Reach at the Kennedy Center where Cleo and Theo like made like appearance little appearance and all that for the expo,
It's
Games Expo.
Yeah.
ED Games Expo.
Yeah.
So I have some pictures, or we could. And to those who
Oh,
want to see
great.
it better, we post production. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a fan art I made for the both of them. I remember
Nice.
when I showed it to Jen and to both, particularly Jen and Peter. I was like, "Oh, you did this!" Like, "Oh my gosh, that's awesome!" And I remember Peter was like, "How did you do that?"
I know.
They're such a
And
great guys, and
Yeah,
Chris,
there's
Oh yeah,
Chris
that's
Sir.
great. It's great.
Yeah.
and,
Great.
With
Love it. Good
with
people.
a Theo and Cleo photobomb in the
Yes.
background
I love
Love
it.
that
Yeah,
photo.
great.
And
there. Yes, I love that photo.
and a little video that I even recorded of them doing a Double Trouble
Yeah,
song.
yeah, W Trouble. They did one of
W
the
Trouble.
songs from Between the Lions during that event,
Nice.
which was
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
that's awesome.
I'm just looking at it. I remember you
And one more
and
thing.
Yeah, they
I
did like
was
a little
just
nosy
gonna
nosy
mention
nosy
that.
like
I
they
was
did in the
just
show.
gonna mention that.
Yeah, and then me and Cleo did nose, and then Theo was like, of course Theo says a joke, but he's like, Jake,
Excuse me.
When
Yeah.
when
pretty
we
much,
had
That's my
pretty
wife.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
when we had Peter on just before Christmas, we had brought up before we had started recording that Jake and Peter had met. He's like, yeah, it's like, yeah, and, oh god,
It's like,
I forgot what was exactly we were
Jake,
talking
Jake, what you did with
Yeah.
Cleo, huh?
you you flirted with her aggressively.
yeah. I love
Uh,
those guys.
Peter Linz is maybe the nicest man in the entire world. I was about to
Yeah.
say in the
Oh, yeah.
business. No,
Oh,
it goes
yes.
beyond that.
In
He's the nicest guy in the world.
world.
I will say, okay,
Yes,
so
so
I'm gonna
sweet.
backtrack for a second because we were talking
And
about
Jen
like,
and Chris and the woman.
oh, they're all
Yeah.
they're all great. There's not a
They're
bad
all
bad one in
amazing.
the bunch. But you were asking me earlier about
Peter.
moments that I knew that ToughPigs had made it, and one of them also was that there's an interview with Walter from the promoting the 2011 movie, and
Oh, yeah.
he's talking about being a Muppet fan, and he's like, yeah, and ToughPigs won't publish any of my fanfic or something like that, and it's like nobody knows what you're talking about. It's like you just name drop ToughPigs in a national interview. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
I love
Although, but something I learned recently, you guys have obviously seen it's a Very Merry Muppet Christmas movie.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Great movie. Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't?
Yeah,
great.
that's a
Yeah.
wonderful
So
movie. Yeah.
great.
There's a moment in that movie where Kermit meets Daniel the Angel, and he says, "Oh, you don't run one of those Muppet fan sites, do you?" And we always thought that's. I mean, it's obviously a funny line. We found out recently they're specifically talking about ToughPigs because
Oh wow.
Oh
yeah,
wow.
there was only a couple of fan sites like us and Muppet Central basically in those days.
Right. Yeah.
But
Mhm.
ToughPigs was the one where I feel like they were all kind of asking themselves like, why are these people doing this? because they don't understand, like, these old time writers, they don't get why we would put effort into something just because we love it. Like, there's no return here. It's just us being like, I like it and I want to share it with all the other people who like it. And so they're like, okay, I guess they're just those weird people out there, and they're not wrong, but they put a line in a movie about it.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, oh my gosh, I love the 2011 movie too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it's fun.
awesome.
So great. I mean,
is
for what
fun, yeah.
Peter did, like, not just with him being with Muppets, Walt and all that, but his involvement with Bear, and then even before Bear, and then Puzzle Place, and then Bear, and then
Puzzle Plagues, yeah.
and then Sesame Street, and
Yep.
and all those things that he's done. Like, oh my gosh, he's such a great puppeteer.
Yeah.
and a wonderful human
Yeah.
being too.
So there's another thing I mention a lot is there's this idea of a world-class puppeteer, and I'm talking like Muppet style puppetry, and all of the people who do puppetry with Muppets, Henson, Sesame, they're all fantastic, don't get me wrong, but there's a few of them that are just the kind of manipulators that cannot be matched. Kevin Clash is one of those. Ryan
Yes,
Dillon, who plays
exactly.
Elmo, is one of those.
Yes.
They could
Yep.
just move him up at like nothing else. Peter Linz may be the best of all of them.
Yeah.
Like, there are things that he does with puppets, with these pieces of fur, like it's these inanimate objects that are like, how did you get your arm to do that, to bring it to life in that very specific way? He's just no one else is at that level that he's at. He's incredible.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, now I'm thinking about, I'm trying to think, since we're on topic of how we made it, Jake, I'm kind of curious, how do you think was the moment that we made it? I'm just thinking about that since we're on the topic of it.
Like for our this show.
Yeah,
particularly?
yeah, for our podcast. Yeah, what would
I
would you
mean-
say? Because I've got a few in mind since we're on the
I
topic.
can. Okay, so give me a spot, Matt. Okay, all right, awesome.
Yeah, I mean, interviewing Kevin Clash was obviously a big one for
Yes,
us.
that was
Yeah.
huge for
Kevin,
us.
And
Yeah.
Steve. I mean, I feel like when we started started chatting with Sesame and Muppeteers and all that, I think that's when we started doing that. I think that's when our show started to take off, and that particularly.
Yeah, because I think
You
the
know.
very first, well, the first two, I think, puppetry guests that we had on our podcast were Bruce Lanoil and Tyler Bunch.
Yeah.
Talk about nice guys.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But here's the thing: is like you're asking the question, and this is something I'm realizing with my own answers as well, not just you guys.
Right.
This idea of like, well, how did you know when you made it? And the truth is that the finish line is always moving.
Oh, yeah.
The
yes.
thing that you could say, like, oh, that was the first big thing that we did. You're gonna do something bigger. Like,
Oh, yeah.
that was the moment that like we got to know so and so. Well, you're gonna get to know other people. Like there's this thing of like you, as for your podcast or us for ToughPigs or for anyone who's listening to this who's working on a personal project, like you haven't peaked yet. And I think if you can look back at a whole career and be like, oh, that one thing, that was where we peaked. Well, nobody wants to feel that way. You want to feel like you're continuing to grow. And
For
this
sure,
is something
yeah.
too where like
Absolutely.
I talk about this a lot in regards to Jim Henson. And Jim, who had these successes, these huge, like the Muppet Show, the Muppet movies, and like the incredible things that he created, these characters and the people that he worked with, and like he just had these peaks of his life and his career. But even consistently through his life, and then even like in those last few years at the end, he's still constantly saying, well, what else can we do? What else can we reinvent? What other technology can we create to develop these crazy ideas that like that he's decades ahead of his time. And I feel like for any of us who are creating things, especially when it comes from a place of passion, like we're still going to be finding those things to say, and then I had this success, or then I had a moment where I realized, oh, I thought that I had made it, but this is really the moment where I made it. And then you're going to do it again a little bit later. Like it just, as long as you keep creating, then you're going to keep having those uplifts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not necessarily that we've peaked. I mean,
I know,
we've
yeah,
certainly had our
absolutely.
moments. We're
I mean,
Yeah.
it's gonna keep on going.
Yeah,
Not
exactly.
what it is.
But I
It's
think
kinda
like
okay,
when you're saying now, for example, like if you're saying, okay, well, we knew we made it because we had these great interviews. And don't get me wrong, that's a huge success that you guys got
It is.
these big names to be on your show. But like you might a few years from now be saying, well, we knew we peaked because like someone wrote about us in the New York Times. Like that's a big deal.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
like someone, like
Oh, yeah.
there's any number of things that could happen. It's like again, another thing that I like to say is you can create your bucket list as you're doing it. There's these things that could come to you, that could find you, you could find them, that you go, I didn't realize that was such a big deal or that was so important to me until I did it. And now that I've done it, holy crap, like that's going on the resume, like that's a highlight reel moment of my life. And as long as you guys keep doing it, you're gonna have more and more of those that are gonna totally outshadow the stuff that you're from the first couple years of your show.
Oh yeah, and then there are those things that just happen out of the blue. The unexpected things. There's always a saying, "Expect the unexpected." And a lot of things have been so unexpected. Our show has changed over the years, and it's change sometimes is good. But again, it's not necessarily that you've peaked. You're still going. At the end of the day, you're like, oh, we've interviewed these people, and that's great. But obviously, there's more ahead, and you just. I don't know if you could like fully be prepared, because 2 years ago we never thought we'd get Kevin Clash on. Look what happened there. We did.
yeah.
It's just
One of those
I think the
things.
secret
I
is
remember-
not. It's not. Expect the unexpected. It's not be. It's be open to the unexpected. You can't prepare for what you don't know, but you can say yes when an opportunity comes to you, or you can have a great idea and follow through with it. Like, there's a million things that you could do to make sure that you are open to things coming your way, so you don't go, oh shoot, I missed my opportunity.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that's life advice from us, everybody. You're welcome.
There you go.
You're
Anyway,
welcome.
let's talk about, I don't know, Gonzo's nose. Isn't that weird? That big old nose he's got.
That curve.
It's all curved and stuff. Whoa.
Oh, curve.
Dude.
Yeah.
That's also the nice thing about like running a Muppet fan site or just talking about Muppets every day is like you bounce back and forth between like these really prolific things, and then like
I know.
anyway, like hey, you remember that penguin that got thrown in the air? Crazy, like it's all like this silly nonsense. That's what makes Muppets great. It's both things.
Absolutely.
Jake. Oh, there you go.
Okay. So now, of course, which you kind of talked about a little bit earlier, you produced and hosted several podcast series through ToughPigs. So can you talk about work on those?
Yeah. What do you want to know? Let's see. So basically, it took me a long time to get into even listening to podcasts. I don't know. I might have some like undiagnosed like ADHD or I just have like a busy brain that like it's hard for me to do just one thing at a time. So podcasts were always hard for me because it's like I'm just supposed to listen. What am I doing with my hands? What am I doing with my eyes? I can't do that. Forget it. So I avoided podcasts for a long time, and then ToughPigs started the Moving Right Along podcast, which Ryan Rowe and Anthony Strand are hosting. It's great. I love it. And I basically at that point was like, I guess I should listen to my own website's podcast. And I listened to it and I was like, oh, I think I like podcasts now. Like, it's great. I love it. It's still more so than anything I've produced, it's still my favorite podcast. So after a while, we realized we're starting to get a lot of really good ideas for podcasts. But I don't want to ask Ryan and Anthony to take a break from what they're doing. So how can we do both? And like, of course, the answer is start another channel. And we started a second channel that's basically become our place where we can just throw 8 episodes of this thing, 2 episodes of that thing, 15 episodes of something else, another season of something we did earlier. And that way we're not asking people to like constantly be resubscribing to all these different channels. And it's become like a testing ground, but also just a place where we can just have fun. We've had a few ideas, things like Becca Petunia does Hubba Wah, which is a game show trivia podcast, and like that's a huge hit. We've done several seasons of that. That's something that can come back over and over again. And then there's something like the Muppets sitcom podcast that I mentioned earlier, where it's like we can't really do more than one episode per episode of that show. We've done it. It's over. We'll never do it again. The whole thing started because I wanted to do a podcast where I do interviews with notable people who are also Muppet fans. And I called that show 15 Seconds to Curtain. And I had a lot of fun with that. It was very, very difficult to do because it's just hard to do outreach for famous people, especially when they don't really have Muppet connections. They're just fans. And I did enough to like fill a season, and I tried to do a second season, and I got a lot of no's and like 2 yeses, and I was like, I think I'm just gonna jump ship. Like it was just too much. So hopefully someday I'll get back into it, but that day's not today. Jared Fairclough and I did a show called to introduce our guest star, where we took turns interviewing,
Yes, I love that one.
surprising the other person
Yes.
with interviews. That was maybe one of the most fun things we've ever done. It was such a blast. It again, really difficult to produce because of the time difference. Jared is in Australia, and I'm not. And we also, because of the nature of the show, we kind of had to go in order. So we like months would go by in between recordings, and it took us like a year and a half to do one season. And in the end, it was just like we got to come up with a better idea. So we're working on something new, but I think that one's over with. We also ended that series with Frank Oz, and it's like you can't top that. That's your mic drop
sure.
moment,
Oh,
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, well, once you get to Frank Oz, it's like, it's just
Yep.
Nope.
wow.
Done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Then you're done. So like I also mentioned we're recording Fraggle Talk season 2 right now. Oh, that's the other thing. So I did a season of Fraggle Talk. We're doing interviews with the Back to the Rock cast and crew. I'm working with the Henson Company
cool.
to get all those set up, and they've helped with
Nice.
appearances for music and artwork and things like that. So that's been a great relationship with them. And we did it again with Muppets Mayhem Backstage Pass, except this time we did it with Disney, and that was great. So that's been a real big learning experience for me, working with, it's not just like having like a press relationship with Disney and Henson. We're actually kind of producing something together. And it's a fully ToughPigs own thing. They do not have to do this. But I think that we've gotten enough trust from them, and enough, like, again, it's from their point of view, it's free promotion. All they have to do is spend a little bit of time to help us set up some interviews, and we do the rest of the work. So that's been really good for us. And then we've got a few things that are in the works right now that when you're developing podcasts from the ground up over and over again, there's a lot that needs to be done. There's a lot of brainstorming and beta testing, and things like music and artwork, and just honestly figuring out the creative development of a lot of these ideas. If someone came to me and said, like, I want to do an interview podcast, and it's like, okay, well, there's a lot of those, so we should have our own twist on it, and we should do something that's a little bit more interesting, that kind of puts our mark on what this thing would be. And so that's part of the work of, like, let's have a lot of conversation about it, and then let's make sure that we're recording it in the best possible way, editing, presenting it on social media, getting it out there at the right time, because again, we've got several shows that are kind of lined up back to back to back. So if I know, okay, this show is ending in August, I would love to start yours in September. Now we have a deadline. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that's been going on. And it's fun and it's exhausting. And like you said, like I've hosted some of them, and some of them I just take the executive producer credit, because I do the development and I do the scheduling and the releasing and a lot of the details. But like I don't have to worry about the day-to-day quite as much as the people who are actually recording. So I've been able to go kind of back and forth on that for myself. And then what else can I say? Oh, I will also mention, last December, I did a 4-episode miniseries called The Worst of the Muppets, which is a show that I've wanted to do for a really long time. And that came about because I had just wrapped Muppets Mayhem Backstage Pass. and that was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work because we're working with Disney. We every one of those episodes, like, it was a lot of research to take notes on the episode and what we're going to ask the special guest, and then doing the recording session, and then there's at least 4 voices on every episode, and then having to edit all that down and then get it finished and released and whatever, and then Disney had to approve everything, and so like it was just a lot of work. And after that I was like, whatever I do next, it's going to be the easiest thing ever. And so this idea of like, it's 2 people, it's me and one of my friends that I know we have a good rapport already. We're going to watch one of the worst Muppet specials that they ever made, and then we're going to trash it for an hour. And then, that means like, it's going to be fun and funny. It's going to be minimal editing. I'm going to get it out the door as fast as I can. I literally, when I had the idea, it was one of those like, okay, I can do it for the 4 weeks of December if I can record 1 episode today and 1 episode tomorrow, and so I can get it out the first episode out this week, and I can get ahead of the schedule. And it's like, that's when you have the idea and you're like, I have to record today. And I'm texting people being like, are you available to record a podcast? Like watch an hour special and then record a podcast tonight. And I found someone who said yes. And I'm like, I guess that means I'm doing it. And, was just able to like do it, go boom, 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 get it out the door. Because like, I'm sure you guys know, like when you started 3 years ago, a lot more of like, you're finding your footing and you don't know how to edit quite yet.
Oh, yeah.
There's 3 of you. That's a lot of voices.
Absolutely.
It took us a while. And it took us a while to figure out, like, kind of what the podcast is. And,
Exactly. And now you're at a point where things like, I'm going to stop talking because I can tell you're about to start talking. That's going to make some of your editing a little bit easier. And you're going to get guests that are going to be, good about like fitting into your dynamic. And, you know how to edit a little bit better. So it's not going to take you like 6 hours to edit a 1 hour interview. Like you guys have figured it out. And that's one of the nice things about having done our podcast stuff for as long as we have, where I can be like, I could probably do a podcast and get it out the door in a couple of days if I set up the dominoes in the right way. So yeah, it's kind of like an interesting challenge that just kind of reinvents itself every few months of like, what's the next thing that we're doing on the ToughPigs channel.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So
I'm very excited, for more of your amazing episodes coming, especially everything else, and including if you're going to do more episodes with Froggle Talk, type of podcasts and everything else. We're very looking forward to those.
Good, thank you. I'm excited as well. Once I'm done doing the work, I'll be really excited. Right now, I'm like neck deep. Yeah. It'll be fun. Yeah.
Understandable. Yeah.
Understandable.
So, one thing I kind of wanted to ask about, because I saw it and I thought it was really cool that you got to do a long time ago, was you got to interview several Muppeteers for the premiere of Muppets Most Wanted.
At the red carpet premiere. Yeah. That was awesome. That was fun. So it was such a weird experience. It was because like we consider ourselves to be like, yeah, we're press, we're the Muppet fans, whatever. But like in the grand scheme of things, we're pretty small potatoes. We're out there with like real journalists and stuff. And so like first we had to figure out like, how do we get on that list? And then like when we got on the list, we technically weren't on the list. It was very weird. So like our plan was always to team up with the Muppet Mindsets for that whole thing, just because we're friends with them and won't it be easier to just do it all together rather than double our efforts.
Of course.
So I remember we both got our websites names on the stuff, and we get to the event and ToughPigs isn't on the list. And we're like, that isn't right. And they were basically like, well, we can let you guys like share a space, but like your name is not going to be on it. It's just the sign's going to say Muppet Mindset. And we literally like tore a piece of paper and like wrote ToughPigs in bold and like found a piece of tape that was like, I think I had like a name tag, and I tore like a piece of my name tag off to make a little piece of sticky something so it said Muppet Mindset. We had like 4 of us, but the space they give you is like almost the size of a person. Like it's so small. And because it crams so many people on that red carpet. And we made it work. And it was like me and Ryan Dozier, like chest to chest, like just trying to wave people over to us, and like we're literally just all you do is shout like Tina Fey, over here, and then she decides if she's gonna go to be interviewed by you or not. And most of the celebrities there have nothing to do with the movie. Like they're just celebrities who are asked, "Do you want to show up?" And it's all for clout. So there was a bunch of interviews we did where we're like, "I don't know who this is. I'll ask them who their favorite Muppet is and have them move on." There were people who like I was a fan of, but like I know that they have no Muppet connection. I just want to meet them. So that was cool to meet a few of those people. And it was like Danny Trejo was there. We got to meet Danny Trejo.
And talk about a celebrity who's done a bunch of things with the Muppets now.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. And the Muppet performers are there. And the cool thing about that was just that, like, yes, they did other interviews, but most of the people interviewing them didn't know who they were. It's like, oh, you're the Muppet performer. Okay, got it. I can ask you a question. But we're like, oh my God, Dave Goelz is here. And like, we got to like lose our minds over
exactly.
Yes.
So, so like, of course, and like, because they know us, every one of them stopped and chatted with us. And like, that was just so much fun. It was such a blast. And that weekend, so press doesn't get to go into the movie and watch the movie with everyone else. So that was a shame. But that weekend we did get a press invitation to see the movie early with the rest of the press on the Disney lot. So I remember we went to the Disney lot. This was actually, now I'm remembering, it's the day before that, because I remember I brought my mom. And so like I got to like take my mom to this movie premiere. And all the Muppet performers were there, and my mom thought it was the coolest thing. I'm like, see that guy? Like, that's Kermit the Frog. And she's like, I got it, he knows your name. And I'm like, okay, well, thanks, Mom. Make me feel like a big shot. But I remember we were there in the screening room, and before the movie, they're playing the soundtrack to the movie on the overhead. And we're like, no, those are spoilers. I don't want to hear this. I want to experience it. We hadn't seen the movie yet. And we're literally like trying to have like loud conversations so that we can drown out the music and like plugging our ears and like, don't stop talking. Don't stop talking. If you stop talking, you'll hear the music. But that was fun. They gave us little gift bags. Oh, and then after that, they gave us these questionnaires. It was just it's just such a weird experience being this kind of press. I've never been before. So they gave us these questionnaires, and we were supposed to like write down our thoughts on the movie. And so we wrote down a few thoughts about the movie. I didn't think about why they were asking for this until a few weeks later. There's a commercial for Muppets Most Wanted on TV, and the big text on the screen says, brilliant, hilarious, and perfect. Joe Hennes, ToughPigs.com. And I went, oh, well, had I known, maybe I would have said something a little pithier. But I happened to write something that they really liked, and they put it in a commercial. So that was lucky for me. Wow. And then at that same time, we were doing interviews with some of the cast, and I got really excited about that until, again, as I mentioned, ToughPigs wasn't technically on the list. And so Ryan Dozier with the mindset, it's like he got to interview Kermit and he got to interview Piggy. And I'm like begging them. I'm like, please, like we're here. I came all the way from New York. This is in Hollywood, I'm like, we came all the way from New York. And like, I'm here, like I'm supposed to be on the list and I'm not. And like, they know me and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, all right, we'll see what we can do. And they set me up with an interview with Constantine, which was great. I mean, it would have been nice to get Kermit, but like, fine, I'll take it. So I did one interview with Matt Vogel as Constantine. The weird thing about it, so I go into this room and they tell me no cameras, no photos, no video, but I can record the audio. So I'm recording the audio on my phone like I did for Norman Stiles, didn't screw it up this time. And Matt has Constantine on his arm and he's answering me through Constantine and all this fun stuff. And I'm like, we're having a great time. It was a great interview. And I'm going, this would have been really fun to put on video. But like, why have the puppet at that point? Why not just be like, all right, just turn around, pretend Constantine's in front of you, the frog, So it was just such a weird, like Twilight Zone thing to get to do. The whole experience was great. There was a couple other press things that, of course, I'm forgetting, but like I had such a fun time, and it hurts my soul a little bit. Number one, that we haven't had another Muppet movie since, because it'd be great to do that again.
Oh, yeah.
And number two, since the pandemic, I have participated in a lot of other press junkets, but they've all been virtual. And so although it's great that I can participate in something that they're obviously promoting in LA or Canada or whatever,
Right.
it stinks that it's like we're doing right now over
Yeah.
Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I don't get that
Yeah.
face to face,
It,
and
feel, it
I
feels
want to.
much more genuine in person. Yeah, no, I
It
totally get
always
that.
Yeah.
does.
Absolutely.
I totally
Always.
get that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally
That's
get that.
understandable.
Absolutely.
I mean, who doesn't? Because what's the difference? Actually doing something like that in person than doing that. It makes
Yeah. Yeah.
totally
When I did that first podcast for ToughPigs at 15 Seconds of Curtain, I was insistent on if they were in New York, we're doing this in person. So like I got a whole kit, like a mobile kit to record podcasts, mixer and microphones and headphones and all that. And like I was going, to meet people where they were and like doing these face-to-face interviews. And they're so much more energetic than the ones that I did over soon. It was the phone because Zoom, we were still figuring out. And then once it was Zoom, it took a while for us to like figure out what that looks like. Like
Mhm.
how does it feel to do like it's in person, but it's not in person. And I think we've all figured it out by now because we've done so much Zooming, but like there really was a big learning curve that was not super fun to like have to navigate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
absolutely. So now this is really interesting. So you also got to organize and hosted live events, including screenings and Comic-Con panels. How did you kind of first began doing that?
So we used to do these live shows called the Muppet Vault. We did them for like 5 years. We were definitely not supposed to be doing those because we were showing content that we did not own and charging people at the door. We we knew we were breaking some rules there that Disney and Henson and Sesame might not look favorably upon. But we did it anyway. And then after about 5 years, we're like, let's cut our losses before we get sued. And we decided to end the whole thing. And that was fine. But like that was our opportunity to like really practice on a regular basis. What is it like to get on stage and talk about Muppets and not look like idiots, or at least not look like we're dumb. We can look like idiots, but we didn't want to look dumb. So that was the first thing. And those, in case anyone's wondering, we were basically showing clip compilations and episodes of the Muppet Show, separated by like me and Ryan Rowe on stage doing banter with the audience and doing like trivia and prizes and things like that. We did a few events at Comic-Con, like you mentioned. The first one, we just wanted to do a panel at Comic-Con. Like it was just like, wouldn't that be a fun idea? And I reached out so I knew that we were not going to be allowed to have a panel that was called Muppets or Henson or whatever. And like we were still figuring out what the loopholes were. We have a little bit of a better idea of how to do that now, but like we just didn't want to get in trouble with with one of the big
Right.
three companies. Not that we think that they would have sued us or anything like that. We just don't want to ruffle feathers, especially because we do work with them on a regular basis. So I reached out to the Henson company and I said, would you guys mind if we called it like a Jim Henson panel? And they were like, well, here's the thing. If we were going to approve a Henson panel, we'd want to be in charge of it. So the answer is kind of a no. They said, but there's a loophole. For example, at the time, Brian J. Jones's Jim Henson biography had just come out. And so I reached out to the publisher and I said, what if we did a Jim Henson biography panel? And they said, we love that idea. We love that free promotion. So we did a panel with Brian J. Jones and let's see, it was Bonnie Erickson, Michael Frith, and Fran Brill. So like these are all huge celebrities to folks like us, as you know.
Fran.
Yeah, great people, all of them.
Yes.
And that was a lot of fun. We're still getting our footing, but like we had a blast doing that. And it wasn't for a few more years until last year that I was like, it was 2 years ago. I'm like, I want to do another panel. And same thing, who's got the Henson approval already to promote something? Well, Craig Shemin has a new book about Sam and Friends that's out. Let's ask Craig.
Yes, I've heard it's a really awesome
It
book.
is.
Craig,
Yeah,
Craig's great too.
Craig's great. You got to get his book, Sam and Friends, the history of Jim Henson's first television show. It is really eye-opening for anyone who's interested in early TV and like Jim Henson pre-Sesame Street. Like really, it was like Jim and Jane Henson like having to invent technology so that they could do a puppet show on TV. Like it really is like kind of amazing. But yes, we had Craig to talk about the book. We had one of the Henson archivists there, Susie Tofty. We had Dave Hultine, who did the artwork for the cover of the book. And we had Ryan Dillon, who could talk about the puppetry styles that Jim Henson was innovating
yeah,
at the
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And so like it really was like a really cool piece of Henson history. And like we had a standing room only room. Like it was just, we filled the room with people. And we're like, we have to start doing this every year. So last year we did another panel where it was the writer's strike and the actor's strike had just started. And so I went, I don't think anyone's going to be able to do this panel.
Right, because they can't talk about their work.
They can't promote anything. And even if we could do some loopholes, because there were some things we could have done. We just knew that like people I was talking to were all saying like they just didn't feel comfortable, even if it's not technically crossing the picket line, it feels like it is, and therefore maybe it's not doing it. So I was like, okay, so what could we do that isn't actors or writers? And I went, well, it's Comic-Con. We should be doing comic art. So I did a panel where I had 4 Muppet fan artists. It was Chris Smigliano, Richard Gomez, Jay Fosgit, and Dave Hultine. And I had them on stage. We had like a digital AV projector. So it's basically like a camera.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Richard's great too. I mean, they're all great.
Yeah.
All these people are great.
They all are.
And so you could watch them draw on the big screen. And I was giving them random prompts. They had no idea what I was going to ask. Pulling prompts from the audience. It was a lot of fun. They created some amazing artwork. Those guys are so fast and funny. It was a riot. I would love to do that. Even if there's not another strike, I would still love to do that panel again. Unfortunately, I personally will not be doing a New York Comic-Con panel this upcoming year because I will not be able to attend. My brother's getting married that weekend, that jerk. So I can't go to Comic-Con.
Oh, congratulations to him. That's great.
Congratulations.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Congratulations to him. That's great.
But I promise you, as long as I am attending Comic-Con, I will do everything I can to do a Muppet-related event at each one because it was too good to not pass up the opportunity to keep going.
Right.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm sure whenever when you talk about a little bit of a Sim and Friends book, whenever I'm sure it'll be a fun read for sure.
Yeah, you're gonna like it a lot. Yeah, it's great.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So
that's great.
We you kind of touched base on this a bit earlier, but for a number of years you also got to work in various ways with a Sesame Workshop. How did you kind of begin working for them?
So I think a lot of people assume I got that job because of ToughPigs, and that's not entirely true. It wasn't like they were like, oh, we should hire the ToughPigs guy. It was not that at all. My career is in children's media. I worked for Teletubbies for many years, as weird as that was. I found myself, it was about around 2012, found myself looking for work. And because of the contacts that I had made through ToughPigs, I was reaching out to everyone I knew to be like, does anyone know of anything? And one person that I know that I knew through ToughPigs who works at Sesame happened to hear of one of her colleagues that had just put in her 2 weeks notice. She's like, do you want me to like recommend you for this job? And I went like, yes, absolutely. And it was just like an admin job. I was working in the department that handled like DVDs and like PBS relationship, and it's just like nothing is interesting. It just wasn't like super interesting. It wasn't like working on the show. But I got that job, and I remember they apparently, I found out years later, when they hired me, they sent an email to the whole staff being like, hey, just an FYI, we've just given this position to someone who writes for Muppet Fansite, and we don't yet know if he's going to be like spying for information, so just be really careful around him. And I'm like, I find that hysterical because as much as I love ToughPigs and as important as it is, like my career is a little more important to me. I'm not going to jeopardize that for a scoop.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, I thought that was funny. So I worked there for a couple of years, and then transferred to becoming the executive assistant to the creative director. And cool thing about that was working directly for the creative director. I was involved in pretty much all of the creative projects, including the show, in one way or another. Nothing super, nothing big, but like I was at least present. And I think for a lot of us, it's like that's kind of the goal, is like just to be there. And because of my reputation as being a fan first, I was able to get involved with a lot of other projects outside of my job, that like anything that was adult facing, anything that was about the history of the show, anything where they wanted, the input of the fans, I would at least be in a brainstorm meeting, if not heavily involved in the project itself. So I got to work on a lot of cool stuff. And then, there were things like, I got to I pitched and wrote a video that went to YouTube starring Carol Spinney. That was a parody of the movie Birdman. It's called
Oh
Big Birdman.
yes, yeah.
Oh yeah.
That was my idea. I
Right.
was in a conversation with Joey Mazzarino, who was head writer at the
Oh
time.
Yeah.
my gosh, love
I
Joey.
adore Joey, yeah.
Joey.
Love
He-
Joey.
oh,
And
Who
we were
doesn't?
just talking
So-
about
so funny.
movies. And we were talking about, have you seen that movie Birdman yet? And I said, we should do a parody called Big Birdman. And he kind of went, we should do that. Yes, we should. do you want to write that? And I was like, yeah, I want to write that. So yeah, that's how quickly it happened. There was this time there that we're like, I don't think everything would have happened, but it was a lot easier to just be like, hey, I have an idea. What do you think? And like it didn't always work out. Do you remember Too Many Cooks? You ever see that?
Oh my
the
gosh.
viral video? Yeah, it was
Yes.
a while ago.
On Adult
So-
Swim.
Yeah, it was Adult Swim.
Oh,
When
that
Too
was
Many
so
Cooks
funny.
hit, I said we should do Too Many Cookies with Cookie Monster, and I pitched it to
Okay.
I pitched it to the social media department, and they were like, okay, but here's the thing, things move fast. If we can't do it today and then get it online tomorrow, it's not worth doing. And so we're like, let's just start work while we're trying to get permission. So we got someone starting to pull clips of Cookie Monster. We got someone working on writing music. We're getting permissions from this person, that person, whatever. And there was one important person we needed to get the okay from, and they were like on a plane or something like that. And we're like, it seems like it's not going to happen. So we pulled the plug, and I said, it's too good of an idea to not do. I said, is there anything stopping me from just doing it myself and putting it on the ToughPigs YouTube? And they were like, no, go for it. And I did it, and it went super viral. So like, it was a good idea. Anyway, Too Many Cookies on YouTube. You can go watch it. It doesn't make any sense now if you don't know the 11-minute Too Many Cooks video. Anyway, there was a DVD that came out for the 50th anniversary that it was like the last DVD that Sesame may ever do. And
Yeah, I think I own that. Is that the 50 years and counting one?
yep, that's the one.
Yeah,
So
love that.
the home video department came to me and they said, we just got the green light on doing this DVD project, but we don't have any time to curate it. So you seem to know a lot about Sesame Street. You want to curate it for us? And I was like, yep. And I essentially filled the DVD with all my favorite things. I didn't really care about like, are other people going to like this? I'm like, no, there's just stuff that I like. I'm going to put it on a DVD. And I did. And I fought really hard to get some unreleased episodes on there. Like I came this close to getting the Wicked Witch episode on that DVD set, which would have been amazing. I know it's out there now, but it wasn't at the time.
Right.
Came very close. Came close to getting the Bert and Ernie sing along where Bert's in the bathtub.
I have
that
the
one.
album based off of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that one's on YouTube now as well. But again,
Yeah.
I think people would have eaten it up. So anyway, doesn't matter. So yeah, like that's the kind of stuff that I got to work on. Those were some of the bigger projects, and like it was a blast. I loved it. I after my last couple of years there, I moved around a little bit more. I was in the production department. I worked heavily on the Foley and Friends podcast for Audible.
Oh yeah.
Which is pretty fun.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I was downsized near the beginning of the pandemic, so that's kind of how the Sesame story ended for me. But I did at that point move on to Audible for a couple of years, and I still worked on the Sesame Street projects on the other side of the table, which was fun and interesting. But yeah, that's the 2-minute version of my Sesame story.
Nice.
Nice. Found it. Yep, here it is.
Oh, there it is. Yep.
Bert and Ernie
Oh, there you
Sing
go.
Alongs came out in '75, and whoever Justin is, your Valentine's Day 1982 gift is with me.
Oh, happy
I don't know.
Valentine's Day, Justin.
Yes, way back in 1982, but
Wow.
sure. This really
Yeah,
is
hey,
a
better late than
terrific
never.
album.
Yeah.
Yeah, better
Yes,
late.
yes, it is.
42 years later, but sure.
They don't
this
make
is
them
a
like that
really good
anymore,
album.
you know?
Oh no, not at all. This is a
No, yeah.
really
Nope.
good album. I have a couple albums from '83 as well, but
Although
I didn't
that's
find it till a while
it's
later.
kind of a precursor to like podcasts for kids, you know? Like it
Yeah.
tells a story, it's got music, it's got characters coming and going. Like that's all that these kids podcasts are anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite Sesame albums too. Not just because it became an episode a year later, but just as you said, you know how it kind of felt like its own story in a sense. You know, I love that about it. It's
Exactly,
great.
yeah.
Great album.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, you also got to write for Sesame Workshop's blog. What was it like working on that?
Yeah, that's not much of a story, but essentially they had a blog and I was like, well, I blog for your brand on a different website. Why don't I just do that with you? And like there was also like several times in my tenure at Sesame, they would kind of like remember that they had a blog and be like, oh, we should really be like getting people excited about Sesame and reading about the stuff and whatever. So like and then they would forget about it, and then we would start it up again a couple of years later, and it wasn't much of anything. But I was like, let me write a few things for you guys. I think I was also trying to like segue myself into like a more I don't know what the title would have been, but like I really like the idea of like doing what I do for ToughPigs, but for Sesame Street, for Sesame Workshop, and I think that was kind of part of my pitch of like we could do more stuff like this, and then like it wouldn't catch on, and then it would kind of peter out. So yeah, the blog wasn't much of anything, but it's a byline.
Nice. Yeah, I was just looking up. I was just doing research and I saw that you wrote for the Sesame blog. I thought that'd be cool to ask about that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, glad you did
Sure.
because nobody else remembers it.
So we had mentioned podcasts earlier. What was it like producing and hosting the People in Your Neighborhood podcast?
Oh man, talk about the one that got away. So the quick version of the story is we're talking about Chris Surf. Chris and I were co-hosting a podcast called People in Your Neighborhood. The idea was it was supposed to be a promotional project for the 50th anniversary. It was also supposed to be something that would kind of invigorate the Sesame Workshop alumni. And it was going to be something that would start to create these oral histories of Sesame Workshop history for the Sesame Archives Department. We recorded like 9 episodes of this thing. Oh, I should back up and I should say, we knew this was a good idea. Me and Chris knew that this was a great idea, but we also knew that Sesame Workshop, being what it is, and being as protective as they are with some of their properties and being a nonprofit, and all the things that go along with it, it was gonna be really hard to get anyone to greenlight it. So we said, well, what if we just did it, and then instead of asking them to greenlight it, we say, and here it is, like just put it out there, it's done. And so that's what we did. And we have interviews with like, there's one with me and Chris, there's one with us and Norman Stiles. We Bob McGrath, Emilio Delgado, Sonia Manzano, Sharon Lerner, who was the first, excuse me, she was the first researcher hired for Sesame Workshop in like 1968.
Wow.
Or CTW, I should say. It was pre-Sesame Workshop, obviously. Bonnie Erickson's on there. I mean, like, it's great. We just have all these fantastic people. We had so many more that had agreed to do it. Now we're at that point where like we have enough to share with Sesame. Let's get them to actually say yes. And they just dragged their feet, and they didn't really have much of a plan of how to celebrate Sesame's 50th anniversary directly to the adult fan base, which is frustrating. Speaking as the adult fan base, I'm a little frustrated that like they could have done so much more and they didn't. This would have been a cool project for that, and they didn't know what to do with it, and they chose to do nothing. And so we said, well, we'll do it anyway, and we'll put it out there. And even if 20 people listen to it, at least the fans will find it. Then the pandemic hit, And we said, well, let's take a break, because we also didn't know, like, is this pandemic only going to be like 6 months? And we like doing these things in person. Let's not do it over Zoom. So we paused, and you know, people get sick, people don't feel their energy. Like, there's a whole bunch of reasons to not record for a while. And then, as I mentioned before, I got downsized from Sesame, and I said, well, I'm not doing a Sesame project now, definitely not for free. Like, it's not part of my job anymore, so I'm done. And I know that no one else is going to come up and champion this project. No one else is going to come up and say, okay, let me pick up the reins and I'll be the new host of People in Your Neighborhood. Like, that was our project. And no one else has the historical knowledge within Sesame Workshop and the drive to want to do something like this. Like, it just wasn't going to happen. So the problem is that Sesame Workshop, because I created that show as an employee, they own the rights to the recordings. I can't just release those. That's not mine to release.
Right.
So I had a few conversations with them, with their legal team, to see if there was a way that they could essentially license the episodes to ToughPigs for no fee. And that is something they had the option to do, but it was never a priority for them. And so every time we would have the conversation about it, they would forget what the project is, and we'd start the whole thing all over again. We had that conversation 2 or 3 times before we said, you know what? If it's not important to them, it's not important to us, and it's done. So unfortunately, we have these amazing interviews, some of them with people who have passed away. And unless Sesame Workshop changes their tune about it, they will never be released. And that really hurts my soul, because that was a project we really loved, and it's done. Like, it's ready to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been cool. It would have been cool if it continued. Yeah. But it's just kind of go with the flow, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's business.
I mean, that's showbiz. That's showbiz.
It's showbiz.
Exactly.
It's also, it's part of, like, working for someone else. Like, this is one of the great things about what the state of podcasting nowadays. You guys can say, we're going to do a show and we're going to put our own name on it, and we could get whoever we want. We could release it however we want. There are no rules. As long as we don't break a law, we're fine. Right. And that's one of the great things about ToughPigs too. Like, we have certain regulations that we try to keep to out of, like, kindness toward, certain people, certain organizations. But essentially, like, we have carte blanche to do what we want or what we know is best for us. Working for someone else, it becomes a game. It becomes how can I do the thing that I want under the stipulations that they're laying for me? How can I work under a budget? How can I work under a timeline that has nothing to do with my personal, like, workload? You know what I mean? Like, it's all this other stuff. And I think the only way that I can at least wrap my brain around it is to turn it into a game of, like, how can I make the best project possible under the rules that you set aside for me? And that was going to work out just fine for Sesame, because we would have figured it out until I was no longer an employee. And it's like, well, now it's up to you to either do something with it or to sign it over to me so I can do something with it, but I can't do something with it for you. That's just it's impossible. Yeah, it's a shame. It's a big shame. And the thing that hurts the most about it is the fact that it's produced and it's finished and it's done and it's ready to go. Because I've had a lot of things that I could talk your ear off about, things that I've pitched, things like ideas I've had that got relatively far, but because they were never produced, it doesn't hurt that much. It's just like, that would have been cool. Like almost there, darn it. But, not a big deal in the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is, like, officially, like, lost media now,
I know. Yeah. It's crazy.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So before we're going to be asked the last couple of questions, we're about to wrap up and very soon. I want to kind of mention Idea Man, because you kind of got to contribute a little bit of that too. So what was that like for you get to involve in any way for that? Because it's such, to those who haven't seen it yet,
It is a great documentary.
Such amazing documentary.
A lot of great interviews in
that
documentary too. Yeah.
I was really
so great.
dubious about the documentary beforehand, because there's a lot of good Jim Henson documentaries out there, and it's like, do we really have anything new to say? And yeah, I
Right.
don't know if Ron Howard really came up with a whole bunch of new information, especially if you've read Jim Henson biography, but it's presented in a way that I think is really beautiful and really professionally done and tells the story in a really respectful way. So I think it's a great documentary. And I'm really glad that it lives on Disney Plus, where the other Muppet content is. And I just hope that they put more Muppet content up there and keep cross promoting Muppet projects. But you asked about, okay, so yes, I have a special acknowledgement at the end of the credits. And let me tell you, that was as much of a surprise to me as it was to all of you. I at first had no idea why they listed my name there. If anything, I kind of wish that they had listed ToughPigs and not me, just as a keeping the brand alive kind of thing. But it took me a while to figure out. I think I know why my name's in the credits. So I do these. This is going to sound like a non sequitur, but I promise it's going to connect. So I do these events with Heather Henson. They're walking tours of Jim Henson's New York, and they're available for like charity auctions. So you can bid on get this personalized walking tour of New York City with Heather Henson and me as someone who has knows a lot about the history, and yeah, you get the idea. So part of the tour is like I've got photos and I've got videos of the places that we're going to that I could show you. Like, here's what used to be here, or here's like what this thing that was filmed in this location, that sort of thing. One of the stops on that tour is one of Jim's offices that they no longer have access to on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And I reached out to the Henson archivist to say, do you have any photos or videos of Jim in that office so I could show it in this tour? And they said, unfortunately, we don't. That's fine. At some point, I came across a documentary, a German documentary that I do not speak German. I can't pronounce it, but it translates to Where Does Ernie Live? And it's all about like Jim Henson and the Muppets, like specifically Sesame Street, but it's everything that he was doing in that era in like 1970 something. And it's first of all, you should look up the documentary. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube if you can figure out how to translate it. But like it's cool because you see like he's like rehearsing with Jerry Nelson, and like you see them filming a Kermit and Grover sketch from below the camera frame, so you can see Jim and Frank messing around. There's a lot of great stuff in that documentary, even though you can't understand a word anyone's saying unless you speak German. There's one scene in that documentary where you see Jim sitting at his desk, and it's cool. It's such a specific time in Jim's life because you could see behind him is the stained glass window of Bert and Ernie, and then there's a second piece of Jim and Frank underneath. This is in that specific time where Jim had the top half but was not yet gifted the second half. So like you can see that behind him and a lot of other stuff. Whatever. It's cool. You see Jim working at his desk, and then at some point he gets up and he walks out the door and he walks into the Muppet Workshop, which we know, they don't say this in the documentary, but we know he actually had to go outside and walk a block down the street and go into a different building to get to the workshop. But it makes it look like they're all connected. Anyway, when I found this, I was like, oh, so there is footage of Jim in that office. That's what we were looking for. If the archivist didn't have it, I bet the Ron Howard people didn't have it, and they probably want it. And at this point, I had no idea what the documentary was going to be. And I thought, well, maybe they want to interview the fans. Like, and how else could I get, in front of Ron Howard? So I sent the video to the archivist. I said, this is, obviously for your records, but also maybe you want to give it to the Ron Howard people if they don't have it. And, maybe mention it came from me. And so they said, yep, absolutely happy to do that. And then about 10 minutes later, I get an email saying, oh, it turns out they already had the video. And I went, oh, well, no big deal. But that is the only thing I can think of that like maybe at that point they put my name on a list as like someone to thank.
Okay.
If it's not that, I don't know what it is, but like that's the best
maybe.
I can think of. Of how I got onto the credits of Idea Man. But I'm very grateful to be connected in the teeny tiniest little way to a good project and the history of Jim Henson on screen in that way. Like that really was such an absolute joy to get to see my name up there.
Right, definitely.
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet. I did look it up. I did look it up, and I hope I pronounced this correctly. I just to make this clear for the record, my last name is German. I have no idea what it means, but I don't speak good German either. But I'm going to attempt this. I believe it is Wissen Sie wo Ernie want. I believe it does translate to where does Ernie live. I have not done German until.
What a terrible title that is.
Right.
Where does he live?
That's Ernie.
I know, yeah.
That's like a horror kind of title.
Okay, so Ernie
where
lives in
does he
Sesame Street
live?
like everyone, like every other Sesame Muppet in Sesame Street, and then what's like what?
not just any of them. Solely Ernie.
Yes, just Ernie. Yes,
Just Ernie. Nobody
gosh.
else. Nobody else.
But they want more attention to Ernie for
Yeah.
that. Like that.
yeah. I mean, it's about Jim.
Yeah, it is.
You can't say where does Kermit
Yeah,
live
yeah,
because then you're like, well, does he live in the swamp? Does he live in Hollywood? Does he...
Yeah.
Well, no. At that time, we didn't know about Hollywood and Kermit yet. That wasn't until a couple years later. But
Right.
That's fair.
sounds like an interesting idea, though. But to our German viewers, I tried. I tried.
Yes.
I tried.
Yes.
So as we're getting close to wrapping up here, I know you kind of touched up on it earlier. Could you share any projects you're currently working on, at least that you are allowed to talk about?
Oh, good question. Well, I'll tell you. Currently, ToughPigs is celebrating Pride Month.
Yes.
Okay.
Depending on when this comes out, but we're doing a lot of Pride Month stuff, including a
Nice.
big fundraiser that's kind of taking up the bulk of the month, as well as so much Fraggle Rock coverage.
Yes.
We happen
Nice,
to
that's
be,
great.
I mean, just the way that the calendar's lined up, we're reviewing Back to the Rock episodes while reviewing classic Fraggle Rock episodes while having a podcast about Fraggle Rock Classic, while I'm also, as I mentioned, recording Fraggle Talk for Back to the Rock podcast episodes. So there's a lot of Fraggle stuff happening right now. As for what else is coming down the pike that I could talk about, we're always developing things. I don't know what's coming up like next after all this stuff is done. I know I've got a lot of like WordPress drafts ready to go for when June is over. Got a lot of art stuff. I have one. I will say this will maybe be a little bit of a tease. We have some never before seen content coming from Muppet Babies that I am very excited to share with the world
Ooh,
as soon as we have a little bit of time on our
Okay.
publishing schedule. So something to look forward to.
Nice.
Fits
yeah.
perfect for the 40th anniversary this year.
Yes, we're also trying to figure out how we're going to cover that, because I'll tell you this much: we are not going to review every single episode of Fraggle of Muppet Babies. That's too much. We do these like 40 years later projects, which have been really fun for Muppet Show and now Fraggle Rock. But it's like Muppet Babies, I think that's too much. I think we'll find another way to cover it. But we have a few ideas that we're bouncing around.
Nice.
I think y'all are going to be pleased with what we come up with. But
Absolutely.
yeah.
Looking forward to that.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, it's likewise.
Yes. So the last question that Jake's about to ask is the question we ask all of our guests at the end. Go ahead, Jake.
Thank you, Chris. Of course, this podcast is called Jake's Happy Nostalgia. When you think of nostalgia, what do you think of in your own words? How would you define the word nostalgia?
Ooh, boy, that's not a small question. How do I define nostalgia? Okay, so there's this concept that I think about too much. I watch a lot of movies, and I watch a lot of bad movies. And there are so many movies that like I recognize are so bad, and yet I happened to watch it when I was 12 years old or whatever. Therefore, it has a very special place in my memory. So to me, nostalgia is something that more important than quality, more important than like the question of like, is this good? Not to say that it's always bad, but like more than the question of is it good, is do you have a historical connection to it, whether that's your own history or someone else's? And if that is the number one criteria, I like it because I saw it when I was a kid, or I like it because it's old, or I like it because my dad liked it. Anything like that. And then secondary can be, is it actually good? That's nostalgia to me. You know, yeah, that seems like a good enough answer, I guess. Yeah.
No, that's a great answer. Yes, great words.
Oh,
Absolutely, yeah.
absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Did I pass the test? Did I do it?
Yes,
Of course.
A+.
Awesome.
A plus.
Yes. Well, Joe, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This was a blast.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, this is super fun.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. It
absolutely.
was a pleasure.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. And
Keep me
thank you so
posted on
much.
when this is going live. We'll obviously, promote it for you guys.
Of
For
course.
sure, yes.
Spread the word.
Absolutely.
Love to.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
course.
Thank you so much again, Joe, for taking the time. Thank you so much. It means a lot, and I think glad that not just because having you on to talk about all ToughPig stuff, and also it's so great that we have Muppet fans be joining and this to have the show what it is. So the fact that you want to join in just to talk about all things means a lot. So thank you very much for
course.
being here, and I can't wait what's next door of more of ToughPigs and everything else that's been happening.
Yeah.
on the
Well,
way.
listen, thank you guys for supporting our site and for spreading the good word about Muppets.
Of course.
The number
Of
one thing
course.
to us is always, are we doing what we can to foster fandom with the fans? And that's what you do. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Thank you for geeking out about Muppets with me.
It was
Anytime
fun.
you want me to do
Our
it again,
pleasure.
I'll be back. This
Oh,
was
yeah.
awesome.
Or to
Glad to have you back.
Yeah.
promote new project or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure,
great.
Yeah,
Sure.
course.
Yeah,
Yes.
that would be
back,
dope. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome.
absolutely. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, Joe. I'll let you know when this goes up.
Yeah, sounds good.
Again, Joe.
All right.
All right. Thanks,
Take
guys.
care.
See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.
Likewise, take care.
Bye.
Bye.
It's goodbye from us as well. We absolutely enjoyed our time with the wonderful Joe Hennes. Links to his social media and links to ToughPigs website and social media, and their Discord server will be in
Everything
the
else.
description down below for people to connect and check out their wonderful posts and so on. But it's goodbye from us
Yep.
as well. Keep on the lookout for more wonderful interviews coming your way. And as always, what do we say, Jake?
Keep nostalgia alive. Take care, everyone. See you next time. Take care. Bye.
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 Thank you for tuning in to another wonderful Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode. Be sure to follow Jake and the Happy Nostalgia team on social media, check out our website, and stream the show wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And as always, remember to keep nostalgia alive. Bye-bye.